They were very sweet.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Would you please stand for a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance? Amen. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any changes, amendments, additions, or deletions to the agenda?
There was an agreement for Jackson Therapy Partners that was added to item 10.02 for the speech and language therapy services, additional awardees, and there was an updated HR personnel listing and addendum added to item 9.01, and the attachments added to 11.01 for the settlement agreement that are also in front of you.
All right. Board?
I don't have anything.
I just have a comment on 8.05 and 8.06.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Then moving ahead, approval of the minutes.
Recommend approval of the minutes from the regular school board meeting, August 26, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. This afternoon, or this evening, we have District Spotlight, once again by our magnificent Sherry Owens.
Lake County School District is a place where our students are always learning and growing into the leaders of tomorrow.
Teachers and students spend most of their day in their classrooms, teaching, learning, sharing, and ultimately building a community that will help foster a successful education. In addition to all that teachers do in their classrooms, they often decorate their learning spaces in engaging themes. Miss Nellie Green's first grade classroom at Lost Lake Elementary School recently caught the eye of the Orlando City soccer team's co-founder, Kay Rawlings, who came to visit her classroom.
That was really exciting to have Kay Rollins visit our classroom. I didn't expect that. She saw a post on Twitter, one of my bulletin boards, and she said, "I want to come see." And I said, "Okay." And I didn't really think she would come, and then she did, and we were just so excited. The kids were thrilled to meet her, and she brought them some goodies. That was really sweet of her, and we're really excited to have met her. I'm a big soccer fan. My family is a big into soccer, and Orlando City is one of our favorite teams, and I thought, why not tie that into my classroom theme, since we are one team, we have one goal, and so a lot of the words in soccer kind of can tie into education. I have heard my students use words like, we're one team and we work together. I don't want them to see me as, the boss, and sometimes they're like, no, the teacher's the boss. No, we're a team, we work together, and I'm here to push you and motivate you. So they like to be like, you're like our coach, and I'm like, yeah, yes I am.
Dr. Karen Long won a classroom makeover contest with Additions Financial Credit Union. Over the summer, she got a chance to see the brand new science classroom at Treadway Elementary and made an emotional statement about the importance of the classroom's design.
Oh my God! This is beautiful! Oh! They don't often see the possibilities for themselves in these kinds of careers. And now they can walk in here and get instantly inspired. And for that, I'm very grateful for what you've done for those children, because this will be everything to them. So thank you.
At Lake Hill School, classroom decorations serve a variety of purposes for both students and teachers.
At Lake Hills, we serve a special population of students. We have to be extremely careful of what gets put on our classroom walls. We protect our students' sensory needs, so we don't want to overstimulate our students, but yet we want to provide an engaging and warm classroom that promotes learning. In our classrooms, you will see special features such as light covers, lots of soft seats to provide, such as bean bags, chill-out chairs, to give our students a place to rest. We also have play space to allow our students to get on the floor, use manipulatives, use toys. You will also see picture communication, symbols, and signs around every classroom. That is what many of our students use to communicate. And we want to provide as many visual supports as possible.
My classroom is all about literacy and Dr. Seuss, so I really like to try and get the kids excited to read. This is, a beginning school experience, and I want to make them lifelong readers. So one of my favorite authors that I can share with them is Dr. Seuss, and it really gets them excited to read. They enjoy being in a classroom full of the bright colors, fun pictures, and it's just something that makes them feel happy and ready to learn at school.
Miss Brady's at Fruitland Park Elementary School created magic in her classroom.
When I found out that I was going to be fourth grade ELA and social studies, I wanted to make my classroom kind of a magical event for the kids to kind of find the magic within in the reading that we're doing. So this summer I was making a ton of Harry Potter different things because I'm a Potterhead myself, and I just wanted to make it a magical place where the kids could find different spots to sit at and get comfortable and just find that love of reading. I love to have themes just because we can incorporate it into what we're doing in the classroom. I know when we're doing fluency, we bring out our wands, and the kids are kind of seeing the flow that their wands are making, so that when they're reading fluently, they can kind of see the connection between the words flowing from their mouths from the page. So I kind of just like to do themes because it gives the kids ownership, and in this case, it was getting the kids engaged and wanting to read more. So just making those moments and having that lifelong love of reading was my goal all along.
Lake County Schools is the destination district for providing students with individual opportunities to excel. Stay tuned for the next district spotlight, where we will continue shining a light on what makes Lake great.
All right. That was great. And I'm glad you brought in there about Treadway, about the teacher's room that got renovated there. That was wonderful. I mean, what would happen there, she won that, and it was great. So, all right. Anybody else have a comment? Moving right along then. We've got 4.02. This is Dr. Emily Weiskopf.
Good evening, Chairman Gamble, Superintendent, and board members. I'm just bringing to you tonight a proclamation for National Bullying Month. Lake County Schools recognizes National Bullying Prevention Month for the month of October as part of the district's bullying prevention initiative. And so I have a proclamation here that I'd like to read with your permission and then give it to you to sign, if that's okay. So Lake County Schools National Bullying Prevention Month Resolution 2019-20, designating October 1st through 31st, 2019 as National Bullying Prevention Month campaign. So whereas bullying is physical, verbal, sexual, or emotional harm or intimidation intentionally directed at a person or group of people, and whereas bullying occurs in neighborhoods, playgrounds, schools, and through technology such as the internet and cell phones, and whereas various researchers have concluded that bullying is the most common form of violence affecting millions of American children and adolescents annually, and whereas Lake County children and adolescents are affected by bullying annually, and whereas targets of bullying are more likely to acquire physical, emotional, and learning problems, and students who are repeatedly bullied often fear such activities as riding the bus, going to school, and attending community activities, and whereas children who bully are at a greater risk of engaging in more serious violent behaviors, and whereas children who witness bullying often feel less secure, more fearful, and intimidated. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the School Board of Lake County, Florida proclaims October as National Bullying Prevention Month, and be it further resolved that students, parents, recreation programs, and community organizations be encouraged to engage in a variety of awareness and prevention activities designed to make our community safer for all children and adolescents.
All right.
So moved.
So moved. Got a motion?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Resolution 2019-11.
So also in October, during the week of October 23rd through 31st, is National Red Ribbon Campaign Week. And so I also have a resolution declaring October 23rd through 31st, 2019 as Red Ribbon Campaign Week. So with your permission, I'd like to read it and submit it to you for signature. Whereas alcohol and other drug abuse in this nation has reached epidemic stages, and whereas it is imperative that visible, unified prevention education efforts by community members be launched to eliminate the demand for drugs, and whereas the Lake County School Board is sponsoring the Florida Red Ribbon Campaign, offering students and citizens the opportunity to demonstrate their commitment to drug-free lifestyles, no use of illegal drugs, no illegal use of legal drugs, and whereas the National Red Ribbon Campaign will be celebrated in every community in America during Red Ribbon Week, October 23rd through 31st, and whereas business, government, parents, law enforcement, media, medical, religious institutions, schools, senior citizens, service organizations, and youth will demonstrate their commitment to healthy, drug-free lifestyles by wearing and displaying red ribbons during this week-long campaign. And whereas the Lake County School Board further commits its resources to ensure the success of the Red Ribbon Campaign. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Lake County School Board does hereby proclaim October 23rd through 31st, 2019 as Red Ribbon Campaign Week and encourages its citizens to participate in drug-free prevention education activities, making a visible statement that we are strongly committed to a drug-free state.
So moved.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Moving on to public input, we have one card, and that is Dr. Tibbetts.
Superintendent Cornegay, board members, I want you to know that you are constantly in my thoughts and prayers and everyday activities. And I want to share with you two things that I picked up this past week in articles. The first one is making middle school more tolerable. Starts out by saying middle school students often stumble, become inconsistent, and fall behind, even if they were excellent in elementary school. A university professor, Jeffrey Bowman, at the cost of $1.35 a student, has devised a 15-minute writing exercise, one at the start of school and one a month later, in which they were asked to react to a survey with quotes lifted loosely from former students about struggling in the early months of school. The idea was to suggest that everyone felt a little lost at first. The students who received this intervention had better relationships with their teachers, classmates were less anxious, fewer absences, scored better on tests, and were motivated to do well. I think we need to get our hand on the $1.35 a student test. The second one, in light of the bullying comments and all of the efforts we've spent on mental health professionals in the past year, let me read you the most recent research. There is no factual link between mental illness and violence against others. None, zero, zip. But the author didn't stop there. He says, mental illness is certainly a problem in this country, but hate is not a mental illness. Neither is murder. Our patients, friends, and family members with mental illness deserve better than to be America's scapegoats. We spent an awful lot of time hiring brand new mental health professionals mandated by our insightful legislators in Tallahassee, because if we hired these people, it's going to cut down on school violence. Obviously, there is no correlation, and I just thought I would share these items with you. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, sir. All right. Moving on to our reports, Mr. Johnson.
Yes, I think at the last meeting I indicated to you that you would be receiving the format for the superintendent's evaluation and that I needed them back as quickly as possible. Well, I want to thank Mr. Dodd and Mr. Mathias for being on the good list. And
Who was last? Better yet, let's have that discussion.
But if you could take a look at that, you all should have it. If you don't, let me know. It's set up so that you can put the answers directly on the form and send it back without having to print it off. So if you do that, we'd appreciate it. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you. Tell Valerie, thank you for that, please. Thank you. Because I know Steve didn't do it. All right. Moving on now to consent agenda. Superintendent.
I just want to clarify, I know that Mr. Mathias had comments on two of the items. Would you like for those items to be pulled, or?
I just wanted to comment, that was all.
All right.
Would you like to do that before we consent? Or?
If you don't feel like they'll need
During
to be pulled, we
discussion?
can just go ahead and you comment, and then we'll go ahead.
That's cool. I'll go ahead and comment then. Okay. As we are all committed to buy local, two things that struck me on this agenda were the purchase of 3 fleet vehicles on 8.05 and 1 on 8.06. It was to the tune of almost $90,000. And so I reached out to Mr. Carr. He explained to me the process that he had gone through, and I actually reached out to a local Dodge dealership. And the fact is that we're saving almost $10,000 per vehicle, what he could offer it for. And as a taxpayer, he endorsed that we buy off of this bid. So to our operations, to you, and to purchasing, I just wanted to compliment you guys on watching out for the taxpayers' dollars, because when I called Mr. Carr, he was absolutely on board with the buy local, but also had recognized that significant savings, and he was absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Thank you for following up with that.
When I saw the cost of those vehicles, I know the superintendent and Mr. Carr know that I've expressed of them. I thought,
Oh, your mic.
it's on. Can you hear it now? Anyway, I was super impressed that you were able to get the prices that you did on the truck that you got. I mentioned that to you before, but absolutely, that price stood out to me, and I was like, wow, that is incredible that we were able to get that kind of
It was
deal.
almost like we got one, for every 2, we got 1 free.
Right, it was incredible. So,
And
good work.
we did buy local one time before, and that's as far as I'll comment.
All right, then.
All right, I recommend approval of consent agenda items 8.01 to 10.12.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Moving on to 11.01, the discussion. Mr. Johnson.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you need to declare this to be an item that has cause to be pulled or to be considered on short notice. This is an item regarding a settlement agreement, and the other party, the former employee, and I both agreed to have this on tonight's meeting as it's to both parties' interests, and I'd ask you to consider it as an emergency item.
Okay. Anybody have a problem with that? Nope. Then consider it done.
Okay. This particular item deals with the claim of an ESC teacher, Ms. Sanderlin, that was before you not too long ago. This was a matter where Ms. Sanderlin was terminated. She appealed to a DOA hearing officer. A DOA hearing officer essentially, we believe, ruled that we had just cause to take action, but disagreed with our recommendation for the action that was to be taken. We felt that that was contrary to what all the case law says that a DOA hearing officer is entitled to do. His order came before you. You agreed with that assessment and entered a final order modifying some of the findings of the DOA hearing officer, both the facts and the conclusions. Ms. Sanderlin then appealed that to the 5th District Court of Appeal. And we recently had a mediation in front of a mediator in Orlando with Mr. Farnsworth and Elizabeth and myself to try to resolve this particular claim before it went further. As a result of that mediation, we came up with a tentative, and it's tentative until it's considered by the board, settlement agreement. That's essentially the settlement agreement allows for a payment of $7,500, a release of any claims against the school board. We would rescind the final order that was recently entered and reinstate her in employment and immediately accept her resignation. And as part of the agreement, she understands that she is resigning without any leave to file for rehearing or for rehiring with the school board in the future. Why do this? We do this because it's a pretty good settlement, and it puts us in a position where it's difficult to tell you that I can win for less than $7,500. That it would cost that with it, just with the court reporter for the hearing would be $1,000, and that's guaranteeing that you would be winning. That doesn't guarantee the other alternative was losing and potentially paying some of the other side's attorney's fees and costs. I think that this is the best we can do for the district to save money on this particular case. As far as making a point with an employee for the conduct that was committed in this particular matter, I think that a case that didn't go through a hearing officer and have the hearing officer rule against it first would be a better case to try to make that point with than this particular one. Where the hearing officer makes the ruling, it's an extra burden to try to overcome that ruling, and it puts it more difficult in order to be able to prevail on that. But essentially what we would ask that you consider doing this evening is to approve the settlement agreement and all of its inclusive terms, to rescind the final order, to reinstate Ms. Sanderlin as employee, and immediately accept her resignation. Is that everything, Elizabeth? Okay.
All right. Anybody want to make that motion?
Well, the superintendent needs to
Okay. Tell us your
recommendation.
I recommend all those things that you just said.
I second all what he just said.
I didn't write them all down.
Make a motion.
Oh, I make the motion?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make a motion then to accept the recommendations of council that we rescind the motion where we terminated her, that we reinstate her with the agreement that she immediately resigns, and that we offer her $7,500 from our general fund.
Yes, sir. It's pretty good.
I need a second, I guess.
Second?
Second. Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
So let me ask a question about this, because now if we had terminated her, right, and she goes to apply in another school district, then I guess that is probably looked differently by that school district than a resignation, right? So
We have agreed as part of in the settlement agreement, there is a provision that there will be a letter placed in her personnel file that'll essentially state the facts, that she was recommended for termination, that there was a hearing officer, that there is a order by the hearing officer which will be attached, that she appealed, that the school board overturned that in its final order, that she appealed that, and that we entered into a settlement agreement, and the settlement agreement will be in the file. So all of that will be public record, including the transcript of and all the testimony at the hearing will be available for anyone who's interested.
So it's really up to the hiring people in another district to vet the candidate. It's
Yes,
their-
ma'am.
Yeah, we're giving them all of our information.
Okay.
That's how I had to settle on it, that it's a business decision that it's hard to make this decision because of the thought of her leaving this district and being hired in another district, knowing that what we don't stand for is what she did. And so knowing that we can't win for more than $7,500 and that all of that information will be available to whoever is hiring her it has to be enough at this point for me.
Yeah.
But there again, also it lets her know that her actions were not acceptable and probably won't be elsewhere, so she know not to do it that way any further. So, I mean, it's a learning lesson. So we got a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to our superintendent's report.
So as you are aware, the school district received a little over $4.2 million in Best and Brightest funding, and to be distributed according to state statute. And so one of the pots, remember there's 3 pots of money. The first one is that recruitment piece that was yet to be determined because that is currently part of our negotiations. Pot number 2 is the part that was defined in state statute, and we were waiting for the state to tell us who qualified for the provisions in part number 2, that retention piece. And so we got that information on Saturday morning. That email came in, and I just wanted to let you know who is eligible for that award. This is going to classroom teachers that are highly effective or effective. They receive $2,500 if they're highly effective. They receive $1,000 if they were effective. And in one of these qualifying schools, the criteria is that they taught in the qualifying school per the Florida Department of Education for 2 consecutive years, including the current year, which has improved an average of 3 percentage points or more in the percentage of total possible points achieved for determining school grades over the prior 3 years. So that incremental growth that over the 3 years of 3.
And we did, right?
This is specific to each school. So we had 19 schools that had the gains as defined in statute. So I was just going to tell you who those schools are, because the highly effective teachers in these schools that meet that criteria and those that are effective will be receiving those bonus funds. And so our elementary schools that were eligible were Cypress Ridge, Eustis Heights, Leesburg Elementary, Lost Lake, Pine Ridge, Sawgrass Bay, and Seminole Springs.
It's really ironic that Leesburg Elementary, a D school, had some of our best gains. That just shows you how
Yet there are A schools that
frustrating.
are not included on that list.
Yes.
Yeah.
How logical. It's not at all logical what they're doing.
It's the 3-year thing. Is that the trigger? That it has to be consecutive over 3 years. And so there's even some A schools that are on the bottom 300 list, which is
ridiculous.
Yeah. So our middle schools that are eligible and those teachers will receive bonus funding is at East Ridge, Mount Dora, Tavares, Umatilla, and Windy Hill. And our high schools are Lake Mineola, South Lake, and Tavares. We had 3 of our conversion charters that qualify, Round Lake, Mineola, and Spring Creek, and 1 regular charter, Imagine. So those teachers will receive that funding as well. So it's about 1,200 teachers, we estimate roughly, that will receive some bonus funding, and so highly effective gets $2,500 and the effective get $1,000. And now that data has been provided to us, we'll see how much is left then for negotiations for the third pot of money, which is the instructional personnel. So we look forward to being able to sit down and negotiate the rest of the distribution of the Best and Brightest funding. So I just wanted to update you on where we are with that and who is eligible for those funds. It is interesting, right?
Yeah.
How that. Also, just a few other highlights. We are celebrating Freedom Week in all of Florida's public schools, and our students will join students from across the state in learning more about the intent, meaning, and the importance of the Declaration of Independence this week. had a chance to walk schools today and saw a lot of that going on. So good stuff. And we are very pleased to be a part of that statewide observance. Also this week, we are participating in the statewide Dads Take Your Child to School Day, and that's happening on Wednesday. So all you dads, Mark? This is always an exciting time for us as we recognize the impact fathers, father figures, and male role models have on the lives and education of our children. And finally, we kicked off Hispanic Heritage Awareness Month on September 15th, and this observance will continue through October 15th as we help our students learn more about the important contributions people of Hispanic heritage have made and continue to make in our country. So lots of fun and great activities going on, and also want to thank those who contributed to our Spotlight video. What we're seeing throughout our district is classrooms that are engaging, and they have structures in place for greater collaboration than we've ever seen before. And it's exciting to see the changes that are occurring for our kids. We had 2 letters of condolence that were sent. Glenn Lorsey is the father of Jennifer Farnsworth, the assistant principal at Tavares High School, and the father-in-law of Chad Farnsworth, the assistant superintendent for human resources. And also condolences went to the family of Joanne Tucker. She's a retired bus driver. And that's all.
All right. Moving on to board comments, Mr. Mathias.
I was struck by this letter that was put in my box, and I'm sure it was in all the board members' boxes, from Warrant Officer Michael Ulmer. And as I was reading it tonight before the board meeting, it struck me that he had paralleled somewhat my career, and certainly yours, Mr. Dodd, where he went to work for Walt Disney World. He would enlist in the United States Army. He was with the 101st, which is in Fort Campbell. I was with the 82nd, which was in Fayetteville. But he speaks about his life and what he's now a warrant officer, a Black Hawk pilot in the 101st Combat Aviation Brigade. And that as he goes through his story of what band meant to him, and that's what this whole letter's about, is the discipline and camaraderie and leadership that he learned. And the most important part is that he's going to be donating his trumpet that he played during his time at East Ridge High School Band, along with a cash contribution to the school. And that speaks to how high school touches all of us, as it so happens with Glenn Lursey, who just passed. I was in band with him at Andrew Jackson. And that those connections stay with you forever, and those qualities that you learn in those extracurricular activities, music, sports, arts, stays with you. So he heard about it, he wrote about it, he took the time to draft this three-page letter to each of us that speaks to his commitment to his alma mater. And so I was very prideful to read it. I'm very proud to put it on the public record. That's it.
I wanted to just mention, I was certainly taken back when I was looking at the agenda last week at the number of teachers that are listed on here as being out of field. And I know we talk a lot about teacher retention, and we talk about why people leave, and I know that they have a limited number of years to get these endorsements. Holy cow, there's like 5 pages of endorsements that are needed. And you want to say something? Go ahead.
Unless you're getting ready to provide some clarification.
Well, the only clarification I wanted, it's a reality. We all know it's a reality. We know that the state of Florida will take people that are not education majors right out of college, and that a lot of these endorsements, I feel like, are a result of somebody coming in without classroom experience. We know the reading endorsement is coming. We've talked a little bit about that as well, just the requirement that now we have to have the reading endorsement. And, I'm thinking of a UCF perspective, that they graduate with their ESOL endorsement. They graduate with their reading endorsement. They're going to graduate with their ESE endorsement. So is it that we're tending to this population then that's come in without the education background classes? In my long tirade of all this, I just wanted to point it out and say that I feel like we've talked about legislative priorities coming up, that I don't know what we want to say, but it certainly sends a message when we see this many pages, and we know that we're trying to retain our best and brightest teachers, not to use that term in any kind of supportive ways, but just how do we help this? What do we do, and what can we speak to about our legislators in regards to that? So if you want to add to that, I'd be happy to hear what you had to say.
I don't know, Mr. Farnsworth wants to provide any clarification, but I know that a lot of that, and you said what I was going to say, which is essentially that, remember the teacher who does not have their ESOL endorsement, a non-English speaking student walks in the door and they hit the time clock that then they have 2 years to complete their ESOL certification, depending on what they're teaching, remember.
And then we can't hire them back. So even if they're highly effective and receiving $2,500 after, well, they wouldn't be there for 3 years, but we don't have the capacity to say we want to keep them.
And the ESOL endorsement isn't teaching a language. I feel
No.
like people think that
Right.
a Spanish-speaking student comes in and that teacher then learns Spanish. It's not true at all. It can be any language, and there's many, many languages that our children speak. They just are taking a class to teach them skills to handle a child who speaks a different language, which is a very odd topic, frankly. And I'm not sure it's really that useful of information, frankly. You know, certainly
Pricing, though, I mean, it's another requirement that we're not even sure the helpfulness of it, to be honest with you. I sat through 300 hours after graduating my education course, and I can tell you I learned nothing. And that is not speaking towards the people that provided the instruction. I learned nothing. There was nothing. It was 300 hours of wasteful time. And this was 20 years ago, so please disregard. I'm not trying to insult anyone by saying that, but it was just, it was ridiculous. At least then I got paid for it. We don't get paid for it anymore now that it's been a requirement for 20 years, right? Right. It's just flabbergasting. So take that and chew on it for a little bit, I guess, because you're looking at me funny. Anyway, it just made me crazy.
Well, I did my ESOL endorsement not quite 20 years ago.
Oh, is that, you are 1 year younger than me.
And education was also a second career for me. And I'm afraid, you know, I had the exact same sentiment about the 300 hours that I felt like it was completely pointless because I didn't get what I thought I was going to get out of it, and which is bizarre because, you know, I didn't go to college for education.
So you would think you would get more.
Yeah, you would think so. You would think so. But these were strategies I was already using in my classroom. So if somebody can walk in, I mean, it's not like rocket science. Right. You know, I think that if we're looking for some
right, some
something useful,
to reach those kids.
Yeah, the 300 hours needs review.
Yes, maybe that's what the message is. I don't know what the message should be. That still doesn't advocate for
Yeah, it seems like something that could be maybe discussed in an hour online video as opposed to a 300-hour course, because the vast majority in these 5 pages is ESOL.
Anyway, I wasn't going to end on that note, I promise. I got to go to Rhymes. I know a lot of you are reading Junie B. Jones and the Stinky Smelly School Bus, which was the very first one that Jason and I read, and we've had it since I had Jensen at that age, and she's amazing. And it was funny because the day that I went and read, she didn't make good choices, and so the principal, Mr. Dudley, got on and said, boys and girls, we know that Junie B. doesn't make the best choices, and she doesn't live by the Rhymes motto, just be kind and be courageous, and it was super cute. But boy, it was just a pleasure to be there and to take a picture with the smelly bus and knowing that they're supporting literacy, so we appreciate the invitation he has every year. When I left there, I got the opportunity to go to Beverly Shores, and I just wanted to tell you, the board members and the public, most refreshing meeting I've been in and the whole start of the school year. They said, Mrs. Christides is a personal friend of mine, and I just happened to text her and say, I don't want to, intrude. I just want to look at you and see that you're healthy, because she is a workaholic. And she said, please come. We're having a leadership meeting. You can sit in. They had a spot. I sat at the table. They were positive. They had a vision. They had non-negotiables. They are all on the same page. It was like this harmonious angel singing in the background. Seriously, that sounds a little bit corny, but that's the way that I left. Mr. Miller walked out with me, and he just couldn't give that school the highest compliments. So I am really excited about the things that are happening there. I know that the team out here has done amazing work with them. I thank you for that. Mrs. Christides' leadership team and they're just doing phenomenal work there. So I left encouraged as a board member, knowing that the realities of that job. They looked at data. They looked at what they're going to have to do this year, and I'm 100% confident that they'll be able to do that. And so it was an amazing morning for me. And then I'll follow up with Triangle Elementary School provided my student interns, who are all over the place in their internship 1 positions. And just to give you a brief background, because I'm talking a lot. Nobody turned the timer on. I never do this. They are only in schools Mondays and Tuesdays for their internship 1 experience, and so a lot of them don't get to see common planning because they're not there when it happens, or some of them only are in math and science class, and others are only in a reading and social studies class, so they don't get to see mathematics being planned. And so Triangle let me have them observe their 3rd grade team in a common planning setting, and we got to then see the lesson actually being implemented. So they got to see the plan, what common planning looks like, in the vision, and they got to see the template, the what are we learning, how are we going to learn it, how do we know kids know it, what do the teachers know that they know it. It was a beautiful, harmonious thing. And I graded their reflections this weekend and today, and they they could not say enough things about the things they were seeing with the collaborative planning. And so I thought it would be effective anyway, but then to read their words and how encouraged they were by the collaborative planning, and as new teachers, how they're very scared to come into a classroom by themselves and be responsible for all of that, and how supported they would feel if that was their environment. Looking at Dr. Weiskopf, she's not looking at me, like they were like, this is what we need, and this is amazing work. And so I just wanted to thank Mrs. Strawn and Mrs. Hartog and all the third grade teachers at Triangle for being open to having 17 interns observing their lesson plans and their lessons. So it was great work around the district instructionally, and I was just super proud of everything that I'm seeing. So thank you. That's it.
That was
I talked
fabulous.
Fast too. That could have been longer if it would have been Bill or you talking.
Overdrawn that side.
Oh, is that what you were doing? I was like, is she a cat? Are we?
Mr. Dodds.
Yes, hey. Well, I'd like to offer some thanks to Rhymes for the invitation to come read. I had the opportunity also to come read a chapter from the Junie B. Jones book, and what I think is particularly neat about this activity they do is that it creates something in common with everybody in the school. You know that, and maybe they've got this advantage since they only go to second grade, but everybody in the school is reading the same book, and so you can connect with any kid at any given time, and be able to converse about that, which I think is pretty clever. I had a note here on my comments that I was going to offer up some rebuke for the best and brightest in the implementation this year, and perhaps we might have done that already as a board with pointing out some of my observations that I had written down here. But this made me think a little further. Every year we always throw in our legislative platforms that we want to see the best and brightest go away. We want to be able to implement that in terms of salary increases versus teacher bonuses, particularly when we have an incredibly high-performing teacher, those that are rated highly effective, and maybe those coupled with that, not only are they highly effective, but they've been in a school for a very long time, and maybe they're not even teaching a tested grade, and those people are left out of this bonus program. It makes me wonder if, well, it seems like the state doesn't seem to want to budget all on the bonus idea, that maybe our a twist here is that we advocate that they allow us to give bonuses to, without all these parameters here, although still my first choice is the salary increases over bonuses. But I don't know. I don't know, to what extent they'll have conversations about the results. I hope that the legislators will think that this is not what they were going for when you leave out these A schools, but yet you include schools that dropped a letter grade. It seems wacky in my mind. And the other thing that I thought was interesting is that, I had shared out a piece of our last workshop with the new STEAM school that we've got going in, sharing a link that people can go see that presentation or to watch the meeting with the Q&A there. And what I found following was rather intriguing was that, how many folks have trouble understanding just how our budget works, and not only how our budget works, but how the capital portion of that works. And I know Mr. Ward has gone out onto the community many times to share how this works, but boy, it's quite elaborate. How many folks would say that this school is great, but it comes at the expense of something else that is actually on our sales tax list, so that school's already there, funded with a different pot of money, or that this school might be coming at the expense of fixing some potholes or providing services for ESE students. It's just so complex for the average citizen to understand. But I guess the bottom line I want to throw out there for folks is recognizing that this school is being paid out of impact fee dollars, which is the source of funding to add new student stations. It's the funding we use to pay for the growth. It's not there and cannot be used for us to go take care of routine maintenance, and not there to provide for operating expenses, such as services in school for ESE students or for salary increases. Thanks.
Mr. Mathias.
May I piggyback on Mr. Dodd for just a second? So in this past week, and manically I approach our FEFP formula every year when we get the first calculations in, and that the FEFP founded in 1992, which was to bring equity between districts. Not that we would be better, but that we'd just be equal. As we continue to talk about the equity compression, which we got last year and we got this year, but true equity for our county and with our student population is $20 million additional revenue, $20 million. So if we keep our eye on the ball about equity, because it's obvious that the state is not going to properly fund under these other methods, and that the bonuses only give bonuses. It's almost like we're treating our teachers like they're commissioned salesmen or something. But if we keep our eye on the ball on the equity component, now I know that the LCA, that they are out looking for $9 billion or something to be added in teacher increases. For equity among all Florida counties would mean an additional $659 million, which I think is more achievable, and that's what that net number would bring. And so that should be maybe our end game as we look at legislative priorities, to your comment, and to yours, Mr. Dodd, as we address these bonuses, that we're never going to get ahead of the ball, and we're never going to treat, no one's even speaking about our classified or service workers that are woefully left out of this whole entire process. And so that's where our eye needs to be, is on that number.
You're here. Yes, well said. Yeah. And speaking of the legislative priorities, I'm looking forward to our discussion coming up soon on that, because I had a chance to begin some conversations with Representative Sabatini about third grade retention. I did quite a bit of research on the harmful effects and the unsound educational practice that is mandatory third grade retention, and I think I piqued his interest, but naturally, he's also recommended we speak with Representative Sullivan as the chair of the Education Committee to forward that. But I think he's intrigued by the topic.
That would be amazing if we could get somebody to sponsor a bill. So I wanted to piggyback again on what Mark was saying with the impact fees and the build of the school. I've noticed some comments on Facebook and social media, and I addressed some of the people directly about, why can't we have a $33 million E-STEM school in Northlake? And the true answer is because that is being paid out of impact fees. So impact fees are what money we collect when new buildings, new homes or apartments are built. And that money is specifically directed towards new seats, which Mark said. So the difference is if we rebuild Fruitland Park, the kids at Fruitland Park will be, and we are working on that, that is a goal, but those kids at Fruitland Park are going to move to a new school, but they're the same kids. Whereas in Southlake, we have kids who they're in schools that are over capacity, so we literally need we need seats for butts. And new buildings will be built with the impact fee money so that those students can take up the new schools. So that's the difference of why it can't be in this region of the county, because we don't have the growth to support the build of schools. And that was a confusing point for me when I first came on the board also, was the difference between impact fees and sales money and millage money, like that each of those pots are different. We can rebuild and refurnish schools with sales tax money and with millage money. So, and that those are in long-term planning. It's just takes a while to get the money, just like saving for a car or anything. So that's all I have.
Superintendent had a comment still.
Yes, your comments reminded me of two things that I needed to pass along. One of them is, yes, we do have a workshop on September 30th. Gray Robinson will be with us, and that's really the purpose of that workshop, is for you to spend time with our lobbyists to talk about what your legislative priorities are. I did walk schools today with Representative Sullivan. I'm walking schools again tomorrow with her. It's an opportunity for me to talk and share some of the things that I know that we've been talking about. We talked today about Best and Brightest. I can tell you she's on the same page with us. And good conversations today, and she's been really impressed with what she's seeing in our schools, and I appreciate the opportunity and her willingness to want to come and see what's happening so that she can be better informed and make better decisions on our behalf. And then I wanted to mention to you, at the last workshop, I know Mr. Gamble talked about, he attended the Board of County Commission meeting where they were discussing the initial hearing regarding the impact fees. And the final hearing and vote was to be on October the 8th, and we noticed today that it's actually on the agenda for tomorrow. So we were not aware of that until this afternoon. And so I know we talked about as a board your interest in attending that meeting. It is up for a vote tomorrow according to their agenda. So I know you weren't planning on being at the BCC meeting tomorrow at 9:30 here, but if you're able to, I know that Mr. Gamble had suggested that that would be a good show of unity if we were able to come and maybe speak to that item. So I know for me, I have the conflict because I am going to be with Representative Sullivan tomorrow, so I will not be in attendance, but I will have staff that will be at that meeting.
9 or 9:30?
9 or 9:30,
It
Mr.
starts
Gamble.
at 9, but
9.
if I'm not mistaken, though, because they're supposed to have a meeting, I thought, next Tuesday at 5:05, and that was for the final budget. But,
This would have nothing to do with the final budget, though.
okay. But it does on our part. But yes, okay. So tomorrow, it usually starts at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
So
And have you spoken to the chair about putting us up front first?
I haven't.
Now, we talked about it when we thought the meeting was on October the 8th, so I'll maybe reach out and see if,
That for the first time in 15 years, when the county commission fully funded, and it's the first time in 15 years, the board stood in solidarity. And I think it's very important if we could all be there. This is really short notice, but I'm going to readjust and be there.
Okay.
Okay,
Everybody else can make it?
I can be there,
Bring you,
I
baby.
think.
You said 9?
It's bring the baby. I'm gonna bring all my students. Not class, but
That's all right.
let's pack them in.
All right, I just got a couple things, and I went this morning and read at Rhymes, and the story that I was reading about is where she hid in the classroom and in the closet and everything, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's not a good thing. I think he would say something later and say, kids, we do not want to stay after school and hide in the closet, just because you don't want to ride the smelly bus. So, but yeah, it was fun being able to be there to participate. Also, some of us, if not all of us, should have got an email, I think today, from the assistant principal at Claremont Elementary about this coming week, and I think it's Friday morning, that the Niagara Bottling Company of Niagara Cares part of it is going to be presenting a check for $70,000 to Claremont Elementary for 2 playground structures that we have approved the playground being rejuvenated. And they're going to be donating a check for $70,000. My understanding is one of the parents of the school is involved with Niagara Bottling Company, so I think that's great. I plan on being there, and if anyone else can be there, that would be great too, show representation there. Our attorney sent us out an email about this litigation about the e-cigarette maker Juul. Is that anything that we want to pursue, or we just leave it alone? Leave it alone?
We're not supposed to be doing it anyway during school.
I don't think it's so much that as just being against, because a lot of this is happening in our schools at places at times.
No, it's not a place for us.
Okay.
I don't want to drag our taxpayers into it.
That's fine, because usually, as he pointed out, the ones that end up making something off of this is the attorney. So, and not our attorney so much, but the attorney that's representing this. So we're.
At one point, Ms. Owens, we had talked about potentially having the students do something about e-cigarettes, though. Yeah, come to the mic.
Hi. The American Heart Association actually came out and talked to us and presented a lot of information. They're going to be speaking at one of the upcoming principals meetings and sharing some of that information with them. They have taken notice, just as we have, of the increase in arrests and other problems. Now we've got the health problems as well related to vaping. So they have a whole campaign that they are suggesting that we use to inform our students and hopefully put an end to that.
Well, that's great. Thank you. I'm glad you followed up with that.
All right. And also, just to clarify something, Dr. Burns, the comment about our students, it'd be be no different, be the same students. Actually, I would hope that we would let our students graduate on to the next grade. It's just the same student stations that we keep. Just a clarification.
Oh. I was trying to talk
We don't
slow
wanna
so I was
retain the
clear.
we don't want to retain the fifth graders just because they
Right.
don't get a new school. But yeah, I didn't want to scare nobody out there. You're going to have to stay here because we're building you a new school. Also, anyone that would be available Thursday morning at 7 o'clock, there will be a sod rolling out party at Tavares Stover Complex, where the Tavares High School baseball field uses. I will be there. One of the parents there again, of one of the ball players, the business owner that he works for at the Villages gave such a great deal to the city for this sod and everything. And I told him, I said, I think it's great. And you let me know what I need to do when I get there. And he said, we usually use potato hose, because of the roll coming out and everything. So I'll be there doing what I can to help. Because I appreciate our parents and our businesses of our community buying into our kids in our programs. So out of support for that, I'll be there. So with all that said and done, that's all I have. Anyone else have anything? If not, we're adjourned.